Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Nicole, and I'm Director of External Relations and Expansion here at the Policy Circle, and I also work with our state leadership councils. Before I hand our program over to our council members to lead our conversation this evening, I want to go over a few things that'll make your experience more smooth with Zoom. So just a note, we are recording this conversation. You are all currently muted, so if you'd like to participate during the Q&A, you can notify me by clicking the raise hand button, or you can participate with the Q&A feature at the bottom of your viewing screen. I'd now like to introduce one of our state leadership council members here in Wisconsin, Ola Felzkowski. Ola is a statewide co-chair of the Wisconsin State Leadership Council under the Policy Circle and serves as the Experience Committee Chair. She is a second-year student at the University of Wisconsin Law School, where she is vice president of the school's chapter of the Federalist Society. She is a long-term researcher for the MacIver Institute and serves as a legal clerk at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. Welcome, and Ola, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Welcome, everybody, to the Wisconsin State Leadership Council's pre-launch event. We are so excited to share more information about the Policy Circle's Wisconsin State Leadership Council through our theme of today's discussion, Courage Over Comfort, Wisconsin Women Who Chose a Different Path. Now, before I introduce our special guests, I'd like to share a little bit more about the Policy Circle and our state councils. The Policy Circle is a unique platform designed to inform, inspire, and equip women to engage confidently with their communities as civic leaders. Empowering women through meaningful conversation is a pillar of the Policy Circle's mission. Supported by in-depth policy briefs, Circle members learn, connect, and strengthen their voices to lead on some of the biggest challenges that we face. Now, to deepen engagement and continued expansion in the states, the Policy Circle created the State Leadership Council program. The purpose of the program is to support the Policy Circle's mission and vision on the state level, which will provide long-term sustainability, membership growth, and policy engagement opportunities. Each council consists of volunteer statewide co-chairs, committee chairs, and members who focus on growing the Policy Circle's audience, mentoring existing circle leaders, and providing policy engagement opportunities at the state level. These three areas are organized under three main committees: expansion, experience, and engagement. I'd like to thank Leah Vukmir, Julie Grace, and Colleen Coyle for serving with me as members of the newly formed Wisconsin State Leadership Council. If you're already involved in the Policy Circle and you're interested in learning more about serving on the Wisconsin State Leadership Council, please contact Nicole Klein. Her email will appear in the chat box. Now, with that background, it's my honor to introduce State Leadership Council co-chair Leah Vukmir. Leah Vukmir is co-chair of the Policy Circle's Wisconsin State Leadership Council and serves as vice president of state affairs for the National Taxpayers Union. Prior to her current role at NTU, she served as the assistant majority leader in the Wisconsin State Senate, and she represented the 5th Senate District. She also served in the Wisconsin State Assembly, representing District 14 from 2003 to 2010. Additionally, Leah ran for U.S. Senate to represent Wisconsin in 2018. Welcome, Leah.
Well, thank you, Ola, and thank you all who are participating today, and a special thanks to my good friends, Senator Lena Taylor and Representative Mary Felzkowski. I was so excited to bring this panel together. I miss you all. You know, people often ask me what I miss most about serving in the Wisconsin legislature, and it's pretty simple. The answer is I miss the people, I miss the relationships, I miss the friendships. So I was particularly excited to bring you all together. And let's just think about this as one of those casual conversations we'd have off the floor or behind scenes on the Joint Finance Committee. We all served on that together. So let's just take it from there. I'd like to introduce each of my friends here, a brief introduction, and then we'll start our Q&A. Senator Lena Taylor is serving her 3rd term in the State Senate, and she represents the 4th Senate District. She won a special election for that seat, or the seat in the State Assembly, and soon after, she was elected to the State Senate. She is only the 2nd African-American woman to serve in the State Senate. Senator Taylor currently serves as the ranking Democrat member on the Senate Committee on Elections and Urban Affairs, and she serves on numerous other committees. Welcome, Senator Taylor.
Thank you so much.
Next, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Representative Mary Felzkowski. She is currently serving as the Assistant Majority Leader in the State Assembly, and she represents District 35. She has served on numerous committees, including the Budget Writing Committee, as I mentioned earlier, and also has served on the Speaker's Task Force on Water Quality and a number of other committees. Representative Felzkowski is currently running for the State Senate in District 12. So welcome, ladies. It's great to have you here. You know, each of us has a story about how we got involved in the political process. And I've often told the story how for me as a young mom, I was concerned about education in the kindergarten classroom. She is now 32 years old, so I think you all can do that. Was a few years ago, and I started asking a few questions that led me to going to a school board meeting and writing letters to the editor. And the next thing I knew, 10 years later, I was running for the State Assembly. That's my story. I'd like for each of you to briefly share your beginning, your journey, and what got you involved in choosing to run for political office. And whoever wants to start, and we'll just go one right after the other.
I can start real quickly. Mine was not such a noble cause. I actually was very involved in a state insurance association because I am an insurance agent by nature. That is what I have done for 35 years. And I was recruited. I actually had an appointment with a former representative who has been my insured for years. And he said, Mary, can I talk to you at 4 o'clock? And I'm like, sure, I'll be around. Well, he walked in along with Speaker Voss, at the time Majority Leader Scott Souter, and they asked me to run. And my first answer was absolutely not. I like my life. Like, no, because I was serving on a national association. I was doing a lot of travel with that. And I felt we were doing a lot of good things for the insurance industry and, you know, small businesses. And then talking with my children, they were like, Mom, you got to do this because you'll be a strong voice. And actually the deciding factor was my ex-husband. He's like, you would be excellent at this and you will fight for people. You've got a thick skin. So that's what got me to run. And here I am 4 terms later.
Very great story. See, that was interesting. I like
that was, and I learned something I didn't know, how Mary got started. I got started actually similar to Leah's story. I was a lawyer practicing law. I had my own practice for about 10 years. And I believed that there needed to be change in the laws based on what I was seeing happening in the court system. And I actually didn't realize how difficult it might be to get law made and thought, I'm gonna go to Madison and help to create law. I had not been involved in politics. And I just invested. I did something else that people normally don't do. I just invested in my own race and put the money in there and decided to run because I wanted to go and help to make legislation. And here I am now running in my 4th term.
And you also put yourself on the ballot to run for the mayor of the city of Milwaukee. That was also a brave move. So that wasn't in your bio, and I wanted to add that. Well, thank you both for stepping up. And I'm grateful that you have and led us all together. And I think we have a lot of stories we can share about some of the things we've done, fun things, and as well as the positive things, getting good legislation across the finish line. Along those lines, let's talk about that. We're comfortable having this.
Leah, I'm sorry. Let me just throw in, since you brought in that mayor's race. So when I ran for state rep, I ran for that reason. When I ran for Senate, you made me think about that. I ran for a different reason. I ran then because then State Senator Gwen Moore said, you can do it. And women often don't run unless they're asked. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on. And Mary's story is an example of that. And it's what made me run for state Senate. But I will admit, when I ran for mayor, it was once again the same kind of reason. I wanted to make change and I wasn't asked to run, and I had to invest in myself because I believe that we could do better, have better, do different. And so another reason that I ran in the middle was because somebody asked me.
I'm glad you brought that up. It is a good point because the same thing happened to me. And And for those of women who are listening in and thinking about political office, you know, it was the furthest thing from my mind. But
Right.
when the seat opened up, and the seat that I took in the state assembly was the seat vacated by Scott Walker when he became Milwaukee's county executive. And I was just going about my life. I was being a mom. I was going to school board meetings, taking on the school board. And I, you know, never really thought about running. But when the seat opened, people said, you know, you really should do this. You've been going to Madison. You've been testifying on behalf of children, and you've been speaking out. Why don't you do it? So I think that is a key component to this, that for some reason, women don't think about it, but are encouraged by other women to do it. And I think that is an important role that we can all play as we try to encourage other women to seek office. And that really leads us to the next question, almost a perfect segue. What advice would you have for women who are interested in running for public office, or for those who aren't quite ready to take that step? What other ways can they get involved in the political process? And we'll start with you, Senator Taylor.
Well, I think the first thing I'd say to someone who doesn't know if they want to run and they think they want to be involved is to literally get involved. One of the things that I think in Leah's story, and even because of Mary's work in the insurance industry, maybe gave her some specific ideas of things that could make a difference. And I'll speak for myself. I wanted to be involved in making change because I had been working in an area and saw how legislation could make a difference. And so getting involved so that you know what you're getting into is really important. I think that's crucial. That's the first thing I'll say. And if you don't know, and you know, you kind of think you want to do it, you know, the other thing I'll say is, you know, there's nothing wrong with also working on campaigns. And I want to be clear, it's a difference working in a legislative office than it is working on a campaign. So getting involved, not just on a legislative end, but on a campaign end, I think is important so that you can kind of see what this is like. It's very different than what, you know, people might think. It's a lot of hours. It's not always being able to solve problems, and it's not all love. It's not all peaches and cream being elected. And so I think it's just good to be involved all around. And then the last thing I'll say is this, you know, there's nothing wrong with running for office and not winning. But it is really important that if you're going to do it, to plan appropriately. You know, just learn what you need to do to run a campaign, what it's going to cost, what it's going to take, so that if you do decide to do it, that just like anything, better preparation makes for better outcomes.
That's a great answer. I really totally agree with you on that, because one of the things that I did as part of my involvement in the school issues was get involved in campaigns. And through that, I learned what the process was. And then I also developed an instant connection with people in the grassroots who were willing to step up and help me. So for those of you who are sitting on the fence, I think that what Lena said is absolutely spot on. And that's a great way to get your feet wet and decide whether or not you want to do this. And in the process, develop all sorts of connections and network with people who can help you when you do make that decision. Mary, what are your thoughts?
You know, and I would echo everything that you've both said, but I would also say that I think one of the things that I would encourage people to do, and I have done, is come down to a committee hearing. Come down to Madison, shadow a legislator, sit in that committee hearing, because I remember when I first started lobbying just as an insurance agent, I mean, Don Frisky was my representative. I went to high school with Don. I was so nervous to walk on that door. It was absolutely ridiculous. And once I did and sat down with him, Don's like, "Why are you so nervous?" And I'm like, "Because I'm talking to a state representative." And he's like, "Mary, we're just people too, you know?" So I think that coming down there and being part and observing the process is a good way to see that it's just like any other job. It's just like any other, you know, manufacturer may operate or a company may operate. It's learning that process, but then again, getting involved. And I think the thing that makes it so important for women to be involved. We are the caretakers. We take care of the elderly family members. We take care of our children. We take care of our school issues. So we know the issues that most affect families. And a lot of times it's the ladies of the household that are also taking care of the checkbooks and making sure the bills are
That's
paid.
right.
So I think we have an intimate knowledge, more so I think than our gentlemen, of what's really affecting that nuclear family and how it laws, like Lena had said, how it negatively affects or positively affects. And that's why I think women make such good candidates, is because we can relate on so many other levels. And getting involved, your county parties, getting involved in grassroots organizations that share the same values as you share, and maybe even starting out, and this is the one thing I wish I had more knowledge of, is starting out at a local level. Like maybe it's just the school board. I shouldn't have said it that way. Maybe it's running for the school board, because that's a very important function, or county board or town board. And that kind of helps you get your feet wet, and then it takes away just diving into maybe the bigger picture. But getting involved, helping a candidate that has the same beliefs that you do, working on that campaign, it's the way to learn.
Great advice. And I like that you keyed in on the fact that women are the major decision makers in the home. We make 80% of the decisions in the household. Why do we not think that we can't make those same decisions?
Exactly.
Member of a state legislature or a school board or a county board. And the other point that I like that you made, Mary, is just that, you know, when you actually go there and kind of see how the sausage is made, you do realize that, yeah, we're just all people that represent the folks in our districts who put their trust in us. And that's the beauty of the system and what our founding fathers envisioned, that anybody, you know, a nurse, an insurance, and a lawyer, we can all be that voice for the people in our district. And that's what makes it so exciting. I think that was the most exciting thing for me the first time I raised my hand and took that oath. And I looked around the room and I thought, we're all the voices. We're the voices for the people back home. So it's a pretty exciting thing. And we want more women to think about taking that path, because it has been very fulfilling in our lives.
I just want to piggyback on what Mary said and give a quick story about women. What I have found is it didn't matter which side of the aisle that people were on, that there's a similar story that women experience. And I don't remember the woman, I want to say it might have been Kitty Rhodes, who, God rest her soul, was a former state representative, former secretary of the Department of Health Services. And one of the things that Kitty said when we did a women's caucus is that women, we go and we're a legislator, and then many women go home and they have a job that's taking care of their family. And our colleagues who might not be women go home and someone's taking care of them. And the point is that women go and we tend to work and get it done. And we treat it like that. And I have seen, at least from my experience, a lot of the work that I at least was able to do happen across the aisle. It happened with men, but a lot of times it was women who were willing to roll up their sleeves in order to be able to do that work and get that done. And so I just want us to remember that we've always been multitaskers, you know, and had to do a lot and taking care of everybody else but ourselves. And so when you do this, I need you, when you think about this, I need you to look at your blue book. And this is something I did for Representative, God rest her soul, Tamara Grigsby, who wondered, can I do this? I don't think I can do this. Literally, we met 3 times. She said she didn't think she could do it. I said, I want you to look through the blue book. And I want you to look at the skills and the background of all the people. And then I want you to tell me that you're not qualified. And you'll find that there are people of all walks of life.
Yep.
At that time, there were people who got a GED or a high school equivalent. You know, my point to you is that no one is different than you. It really is not about someone's better than you, like Mary, like like Mary said. And I just want you to know, after 3 meetings, when Representative Grigsby told me, I don't know, I said, now listen, you are no different than they are. Now you're gonna run.
I didn't know that story. That's a great story, Lena, and I'm glad that you did encourage her to run, because I worked with her on, and I really appreciated her perspective. And we're talking about women. This is a perfect segue to my next question, because we've really come a long way since the right to vote 100 years ago, and we celebrated that momentous occasion. What can we learn or take away from those early suffragettes? What milestones or accomplishments would you like to see for women in the next 100 years? Should we start with you, Mary, this time?
So I think the biggest thing that I've always taken from that is, you know, just think of the glass ceiling that they broke, but how did they do it? And I think, you know, and I've watched myself in this industry, and I've watched other people, just to use an example in the insurance industry. We have to work harder, we have to work smarter, and we have to be better.
Oops.
Mary froze for me.
Mary's frozen right when she said she had to work harder. Okay.
Well, I'll pick up
Go ahead,
until she
Lena.
comes back in. Mary's right, you know, and as a Black woman, I'll add to that, have to work harder, have to work smarter. The other thing is, you know, I've been in the rooms where a woman can say something and nobody comments, and then a man says it, and all of a sudden it's a great idea. And you turn and you look at the other women in the room.
I just said that.
It happens. And so I just will say that for me, the suffragettes, it taught me a couple of things as a Black woman, especially because we still didn't get the right to vote during that time. But what it taught me is that even if it doesn't fix the issue for you, but it moves the issue, that sometimes, you know, you're going to be involved in things like that, and you should be, and you should fight for things like that. There are times that we've done legislation, and we have a saying that says, don't let the perfect get in the way of the good.
Yeah.
Same thing with the suffrage movement. My sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and my chief of staff sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, were 2 organizations that were involved in the march way back then. They wanted those Black women to go to the back and let women from all over the world who were there to be supportive go in front of the Black women. And those Black women were like, oh, no, no, no. And they marched their little selves right on up and integrated themselves in the march, and they were not going to be relegated to the back. Well, what it has taught me is that you have to be a fighter, that you may not always get what you want, but you have to fight for the better good. And I think most important is sometimes you got to force your way into the conversation. And my colleagues know, if nothing else, I learned that much from the suffrage.
Well, and it's true. And there, you know, even though the early suffragettes would say, you know, it's great that, you know, here we are women who've represented, we still have smaller numbers than men.
Yes.
And I think that's the beauty of what the policy circle is all about, is getting women to that comfort point, that comfort zone where they think, you know, maybe I could do that. And that's why your comments and this conversation is so important, because maybe it will get more women to come to the table and say, you know, I can do this. I really can do this. And we have come a long way from that time, but there's definitely more that we can do. You know, I'd like to move on to another question, and hopefully Mary can make her way back here.
Before you do, I'm sorry, let me say one other thing that I thought of. I thought of Senator Farrell.
Yes, Paul Farrell,
and I thought
county executive.
Well, no, his mother.
Oh, Margaret Farrell, yes.
Yes, I thought of Margaret, and I thought of
Lieutenant Governor.
Lieutenant Governor, but the first woman to be a leader in the Senate was on the Republican side. And why can't I think of her name? Mary. Wow.
Mary Panzer.
Thank you. Mary Panzer. And then lastly, Mary Lozic. I think we love Marys, right? But the point is that we have not gone far. I mean, the first woman was in the Senate in 1975. And the first woman to be president of the Senate was Mary Panzer. That's it.
Right.
Like, and there have only been, now I think we're up to 4 because of Janet Bewley now, but Jen Schilling, you know, Judy Robson, and literally Mary Panzer. That's it for leaders in the Senate. And so, and I want to be clear, I don't think ever has it happened, a woman to be a speaker in the assembly or a majority leader in the assembly. And so, although we've come far,
There's more work to be done. I totally.
much more. Just
Welcome
in time
back,
for Mary to
Mary.
be back with us.
Mary, we were talking about the suffragettes and gaining the right to vote 100 years ago, and what can we learn from their early struggles, and what milestones or accomplishments would we like to see for women moving forward? Hence what Lena was talking about. We need more women in the legislature, but also in leadership positions in the legislature.
Exactly.
So that is actually, I mean, that is why I got off joint finance and I ran for assistant majority leader, because I wanted some of the policies that were being set not just to be policies formed by men. And I figured, you know, there's an influence where women have, you know, they bring a different idea to the table and a different set of values. I did hear Lena saying we did have a very small window of a majority leader. Pat Strakota was majority leader when Scott Souter stepped down after he
Oh, I
retired
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, but it was like for 2 months. It wasn't a long period of time.
Right.
But having said that, we do need, I would love to see female leadership in both houses more. Because I think, again, we bring a whole different set of ideas and a different way of approaching things. And I will say this, I've worked on a lot of legislation, and I just feel that a lot of times women can sit down and have the conversation without it getting is divisive.
Go ahead, Mary.
And we
That's
have a
it.
way of bringing things together. You know, we recognize where we agree, we recognize where we don't, but we also recognize that at some point, you just have to do what's right for the citizens of the state. And I think we do a much better job at that.
This is perfect. This is
Real
not
talk.
at all. And you are just leading me to where I wanted to go next, Mary, because, you know, the policy circle is all about inspiring women and developing civic leaders. But many women now are turned off by politics because of the, you know, increasing, polarization that we're seeing. But all 3 of us have worked together. We have led on a variety of policy issues, and we did so by building bipartisan coalitions in order to get the job done. And I talked about this last week about a bill that I was literally taunted by my own leadership that I would never get Milwaukee Democrats to vote for this bill. And it was a bill that I will spare the details, but it was a bill that had to do with how psychiatric services would be delivered to people in Milwaukee County. And I represented part of Milwaukee County. And literally, this member of leadership told me, you'll never get a single Democrat in Milwaukee to vote for it. And I looked at this person right in the eye and I said, not only am I going to get a single Milwaukee Democrat, I'm going to get all the Democrats, the entire caucus, to vote for that bill. He kind of laughed at me. And then I went and called up Lena and I said, can you meet me in the parlor behind the Senate? And I said, bring your buddy, Senator Tim Carpenter. And I met with my author in the assembly, Representative Joe Sanfilippo, and we sat down and we talked about it. And I remember distinctly doing exactly what you said, Mary. I said, you know, psychiatric illness affects Republicans and it affects Democrats. It affects each and every one of us. What can we do to make this bill better so that we can deliver better services to people who are suffering? And I remember you and Tim just said, okay, well, how about X, Y, and Z? And I said, those are great ideas. Why didn't I think of that? Let's put it into an amendment. And the final outcome was that bill passed the Senate 33.
Unanimous.
And I do remember going back and taunting back at that.
Nah.
let's talk about that a little bit, because I think this is the thing that makes people not want to get involved. And unfortunately, news only shows the negative. It only shows the fighting. It only shows the red, button issues where people are divided. They don't show all the times that we get really meaningful things done together.
Which is most of the time, actually. I mean, like 85% of all bills are pretty much bipartisan. Now,
And
granted,
actually,
go
in
ahead.
the Senate, in the Assembly, Leah, last year was 94.7, and in the
90.
session before, yeah.
That's awesome.
And so that just, most people don't realize that it's that high percentage. Now, granted, bipartisanship is different than when it's one legislator versus like what Leah described, a unanimous vote for something. But I would say, oh my goodness, I don't know what year campaign finance reform got done, but it was a little bit before me. And or was it before me, but it was after the scandal. Anyway, the caucus scandal. And what I will say to people who think, ooh, it's so ugly, it's so divisive, it's, just no way that people can work together. The first thing I'm going to say is that you determine what it's like. You determine what it's like, and you set the standard for what it's like for you. And I wish that after the caucus scandal, when they did some campaign finance reform stuff and we no longer could do the dinners with lobbyists, and I actually believe not doing the dinners with lobbyists and being informed was probably one of the worst things that we could have ever did. And the reason I say that is I feel like Leah and I, when we were in, we were a little blessed because it was close enough to the caucus scandal that there were still people who did not make it like the worst thing that you could have ever done, which is to talk to somebody on the other side of the aisle, to work with somebody on the other side of the aisle. When I came to the legislature, my goodness, people had apartments together, people went to dinner together, they hung out together. And I watched from when I came in 2004, got elected in 2003 till now, 17 years later, completely different. Literally in 2016, my opponent ran against me based on the fact that I worked with Republicans. And so
I posted a picture of you. You were having dinner with
correct.
Senator Paul Farrow and I, and they used that against you. As
To this day. To this day.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
Including me walking the governor in. When you do the governor walks in, you always have someone from each house and each party.
Yep. And it was that they used that picture as well because you and I both walked him in. Yeah.
That's correct.
I remember that. And I also remember that I asked you before I posted that picture.
You did it.
Are you okay with me doing that? And she goes, Lena said,
Absolutely.
And even after it came out, it didn't bother you. And I always admired that about you. And I thought, okay, she is absolutely not afraid to stand up for her own principles. And she's also not afraid to stand up to her own in her own party. And I think that is an important part of leadership too. It's what Lena, Mary, you have done the same. And I think women have to realize that, that is, something that you can do, that you can stand for your principles, but also let your own party know when they're not doing the right thing. And I think that's a very refreshing part of my experience in Madison. Probably why the three of us have always gotten along together, because we have admired that in each other.
And again, it comes back to being more prepared, having your facts in front of you, so they can't turn it on you. And it works. It really works.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mary hit it on. Mary hit it out of the park on that. Being prepared, going back to no different than being prepared to run when you're in the position.
Yeah.
Know your stuff and be prepared, and and know your stuff. I tell even my staff, the first thing you have to always do is research, because you want to know what it is that, whatever your position you're taking, because in the end, when you take your stand, you want to know you're on firm ground, that you're not on sand or whatever else, all the different types of things soil you could be on, so to say, or foundation you can be on, because you may have to take a stance. And Leah asked me about that picture, and literally to this day, all those years later, people still use that in a negative way. And you have to know who you are, because sometimes you're not going to be able to chase those messages, those ill-conceived lies, whatever they may be, that people will say. You won't be able to chase all of that. You have to be confident within yourself. And so you have to have your information so you can have the courage to stand wherever it is.
And trust yourself. That is so important. Always be yourself. And when people are trying to make you be other than who you are, then if that triggers in you, wait, that doesn't feel right, you got to push back. I always would say that to my staff, that's not really me speaking. I'm not going to say that. This is who I am. So being prepared is incredibly important. That's one of the beauties of the policy circle. So it gives you the opportunity to explore a variety of policy areas that you may not be comfortable in, because quite frankly, we had to do that when I was in the Senate and in the Assembly. There are so many issues that you grapple with, and you can't be an expert and own every single area. We all became experts in certain areas that our colleagues would come to us because, we know Mary knows, DNR issues. I'm going to talk to her about that. Lena, I know you were great on law issues. You were great on urban issues. And I would come and talk, we could talk about those things. People would come to me because of education or healthcare. So in many ways, you have to be a generalist and know a lot about a lot of issues. Policy circle is a great place where you can get information about an issue that you may not know anything about. I want to ask you guys an interesting question. I want you to think back to the beginning when you launched your careers, and if somebody could have given you a piece of advice back then at the beginning of your career, what do you wish that they would have told you, or what would you tell somebody who's just starting out down the path of politics now from the experience that you have gained having served as many years as you have?
Mary, can I jump in?
Go for it.
So the first thing I'm going to say is something someone told me that I'm so glad they told me was my son. It was Gwen Moore, told me to take your son with you. And I'm so glad, because this year he'll be 21. He just went off to start his life. He has enlisted in the Army. I am now an Army mom. And
another thing we can join together. We're both Army.
Yes. And if I had not listened to her, I would be probably really depressed, because I would blink. My son was 2 and now he's 21. Because you would have never, I can't even believe it's been 17 years that I've been elected, okay? And so something I wish that someone would have told me, but I have to think back, someone did tell me and I didn't do it. My mother told me to keep my law practice. So what I will say to any person who decides to run for office, and especially women, and especially people of color, to carve out whatever for your profession, for you, and maintain that. Don't give that up, because afterwards you still want to have that identity that's yours, that's your way of making a living and all of those pieces. And I also say it because if you are married, I can't tell you how many women came in married and how many women left not married. So it becomes important for you to carve out for your life. That's what I'm saying. Your spouse, your children, your career, because this thing will consume you and it will suck everything out of you if you let it.
Mary, your thoughts?
I think we lost her. Oh no, she's there.
Again?
Something happened. We can't see her, just her name.
All right, well, hopefully we get her back. What has surprised you, Lena, the most about serving in the legislature?
Now, just how ugly and hateful it can get. Just how much people are stuck in their corners and unwilling to listen. And that's not just party, by the way. It's House. It's also, just period. So I wish there was some magic button, but there isn't. And so it just encourages me to try to work harder. So I'm more dedicated this next session to try to figure out how to work past the divisive stuff, right? It's one of the reasons in this time of really trying to get people to understand through a lens of someone of color, the racial disparities, the lack of value that people have, or how quick people are able to dismiss harm to Black people. It has just really shown me in this season the need to try to help people see from another lens. And so I'm like overly dedicated to doing that. So I didn't participate in any of the press conferences that happened. And I made it a point to sign on to both set of bills to say that, hello, these issues for me are not Democrat or Republican. These issues for me are issues about humanity, and that we need to change the way that we see things and do things. And so trying to find that conversation with people is the place that I'm looking to be at, right? And that is, it's harder, if I can be honest with you, because I think after people came in after 2011 in the legislature, they came in and we were at a very divisive space. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the people that came in then, that they kind of believed that that was the normal, or should be the normal. Yeah. Versus, like I said before, when Leah and I came in, although we were moving more in that direction, we were not there. It was completely different. I mean, Ted Canavas, I
was just going to, you read my mind. Yes, he gave me the advice when I got in. Senator Ted Canavas, rest his soul.
Yes.
Departed too soon. But when I got elected to the state assembly, his advice to me was make friends with people on the other side of the aisle as much as you do on your own side of the aisle. It'll make your time up here so much more enjoyable, and you will be much more effective. And it was shortly after that I stayed up for Governor Jim Doyle's first State of the State address. And it was, again, Lena keeps talking about the caucus scandal, but it was a big scandal. And we literally were told by our leadership on both parties, you are not supposed to hang out with the Democrats. You're not
on the other side. Whoever was on whatever side you were on, you were supposed to.
And I walked in to the hotel where I was staying that night after the governor's reception, and I was trying to sneak across the lobby to get to my room, and could hear chatter in the bar, and people were calling me in, and I could hear Ted Canavas's voice in my ear. And I walk in, and there's a group of Republicans sitting on one side of the bar and a group of Democrats sitting on the other side of the bar. And Lena was sitting at the bar all by herself. And so I looked left, I looked right, and I walked right up to Lena. And that is literally, we were both freshmen. It's literally how we met. And I remember she got the stink eye from her crew. I got the stink eye from mine. And but look at, what it has, how much we.
And ironically, people did end up coming around where we were at the bar. So you can be a leader.
So there is hope. And I do think, and I have tried to do that with every freshman that I mentored. And Lena, you have done the same, is to give that same advice so that Ted's advice lives on. And you have told me since I have left that some of those people that I've given that advice to.
Yes.
One
of my colleagues across the aisle that we've done some great work and we have a good relationship is Representative Teston. And I know he's somebody that you had mentored. And I want you to know, it doesn't mean that you and the person will always agree. Senator Jock and I do not always agree, but we have a good relationship. We check on each other and all of those things. So I think part of just the point that, I wanted to make is you just got to be willing to be the example.
Thank you very much for sharing. I just want to be mindful of everybody's time and commitment and everything. We could sit here.
Mary's back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Hey, Northwoods broadband, guys. Sorry.
We've worked on that issue in a very bipartisan way, haven't we?
We gotta
Really,
wait
we
till
need to do more so Mary can stay connected.
Well, how much time do we have, Nicole? Do we have time for some questions from the people that are watching?
We probably have time for one question, and it comes from a circle leader named Catherine B. She is in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and her question's more about interacting with legislators. Her question is, what is the most effective way for my voice to be heard by my local politicians? So maybe
Mary, why don't you start?
Mary, why don't you start that?
Oh no. Oh, did we lose her again?
Oh no.
Well, am I gone? No. I can
No,
see
you're
it.
there.
Yeah.
We can hear you. There you are.
I can see and hear. So I think the biggest thing is it's got to be a personal touch. Don't do a form. It has to be a phone call. It has to from the heart note. Form letters, I mean, we add them all up, but they don't carry the weight as that personal contact with the legislature. So your story, your reasons, how whatever is happening is affecting you, that's what we need to hear.
Lena?
I would agree with Mary. Listen, you can email, you can go on social media, you can do snail mail, you can go to a town hall meeting and speak. There are many ways that you can be in communication with your elected. But I'm just going to say this, when it's from the heart,
right, people
will hear you. Now,
right.
If I start saying, you son of a da-da-da-da, are you going to hear anything I said? So if you write somebody and you're calling them names and blah, 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 you can know that it's probably not going to have the same weight, right? So one of the things to do is to really, again, know your point that you want to make and make your point, and don't make it, even though, yes, be personal and be in contact, don't make it personal. Do you know what I mean? Don't be ugly, because once you get there, I really don't almost care what you got to
Nobody
say.
listens.
Like the person that sent me poop in the mail, I didn't really read what they were talking about, you know?
Yeah, I think that crossed the line.
Exactly.
I would totally agree.
levels.
Personal stories always made a difference, and you could just feel their passion come through. And sometimes we'd even get beautifully handwritten cursive from elderly people that really took the time to write something. I remember showing my kids and say, hey, remember this is cursive. Why can't
no one knows what that is anymore.
But well, this has been absolutely wonderful. I want to thank everyone who participated, my good friends, Mary and Lena, for all of you who took time out of your evening to be a part of this discussion with some of Wisconsin's trailblazing women. Please stay in touch by signing up for future Policy Circle events. Start a policy circle in your own neighborhood. It's really easy to do. Get a group of women together. You can meet at lunch, you can meet at dinner, you can meet at whatever time, and sit around a table and casually talk about important issues that will make a difference in your lives and your family's lives. So we'll add links to the chat. Make sure you follow through on that, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Leah. Thank you, Mary.
Yep, thank you. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.